I wasn't supposed to be there that evening. It started with a knock, light, uncertain, like someone testing if I'd actually answer. When I did, she was standing there, her hands still on the frame, eyes the color of tired afternoons. She said, "I didn't call for repairs." Then, after a pause long enough to feel deliberate, "But I'm glad you came." Her name was Sarah, mid-40s, maybe, though time seemed to linger around her differently, soft, elegant, reluctant to move on. She lived 2 doors down. We'd exchanged polite smiles before, the kind neighbors trade in hallways, but nothing that explained why my chest suddenly felt too tight to breathe. Inside her apartment, everything smelled faintly of jasmine and dust. The window was open just enough for the curtain to stir like it was alive. The lamp in the corner flickered with the same uncertain rhythm as her voice when she spoke again. "There's this sound in the kitchen. Maybe something loose." I nodded, pretending to look for tools in the small bag I'd brought. The truth? I would have fixed anything she asked, even if nothing was broken. Her house was quiet, not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that holds its breath. She leaned against the counter, watching me fumble with the cabinet under her sink. I could feel her eyes on my back, not bold, not shy, just aware. "You're good at this?" she asked. "Not really," I said, half smiling. "But I try." She laughed softly, a sound that didn't quite reach her eyes. I looked up for a second and caught her gaze. She didn't look away. Neither did I. The air between us tightened, thin as thread. Her bracelet slid down her wrist as she reached for a glass. The small movement, that accidental grace, was enough to make me forget what I was pretending to fix. When she passed the glass of water toward me, her fingers brushed mine, a brief, harmless contact that somehow wasn't harmless at all. "You're nervous?" she said quietly. I met her eyes again. "Only a little." "Why?" I hesitated. "Because you keep looking at me like that." She smiled, but there was something fragile about it, something almost apologetic. "And how exactly am I looking?" I didn't answer. Instead, I turned back toward the cabinet, trying to steady my breathing. I heard her steps, slow, deliberate, moving closer until I could feel her standing just behind me. Not touching, just near enough for her warmth to slip under my skin. Then, a faint hum. Not from the pipes, not from the light. From her. A sound barely there when her sleeve brushed my shoulder. "Maybe I don't really need this fixed," she whispered, voice low, uncertain. I looked up. Our reflections met in the metal of the sink. Hers calm, mine unraveling. There was a moment, one heartbeat too long, where the distance between us almost disappeared. But then, something broke the spell. A phone rang in the other room. Sharp, ordinary, unwanted. She flinched, pulling back just slightly. The silence that followed was louder than the ring itself. She exhaled, steadying herself. "That's probably my sister," she said, not moving toward the sound. I stood up slowly, wiping my hands on my jeans. "Should I?" "No," she interrupted softly. "Stay. It'll stop." It didn't. The phone kept ringing, steady and merciless. She looked at me once more, eyes flickering with something I couldn't read. Regret, curiosity, or the kind of loneliness people don't admit out loud. Then, without another word, she turned toward the sound. The hallway light caught her silhouette, delicate, composed, and trembling all at once, before she disappeared into the next room. And for a second, standing there in that half-lit kitchen, I couldn't tell whether I'd come to fix something that was broken, or if I was the one breaking. The next day, I told myself not to think about her. That didn't work. Every sound in my apartment felt like her phone ringing again, the one that pulled her away. I'd replayed that moment too many times, trying to guess who was on the other end, and why her voice had trembled just before she left. By evening, I was outside again, pretending to check my mailbox when I saw her coming up the stairs. Grocery bag in one hand, phone in the other. Her hair was pulled back today, careless, unplanned, but that somehow made her look younger, or maybe just more tired. She saw me and smiled. "You again," she said softly. "Planning to fix something else?" "Only if you break it on purpose," I said before I could stop myself. Her smile faltered. Not offended, not amused, just unsure of what to do with the silence that followed. She brushed a strand of hair from her face, the plastic bag rustling as she shifted it to her other hand. Didn't thank you yesterday, she said finally, for coming over. You did, I replied. Just not with words. That earned the smallest laugh. She looked down, biting her lip like she was hiding something heavier than humor. Inside her apartment, the air was cooler this time, carrying the faint scent of coffee gone cold. The kitchen light had been fixed, or maybe it never really needed fixing. She set the groceries down and said, You're studying, right? Engineering. Yeah, mostly late-night stuff. Less distraction. Less people, you mean? That caught me off guard. Something like that. I admitted. She leaned against the counter again, the same spot as last night, crossing her arms. I used to like quiet too, until I realized it's just another kind of noise. Her eyes drifted toward the window, where rain had started tracing slow patterns down the glass. There was something in her voice, not loneliness exactly, but the memory of it. Were you married? I asked, softer than I meant to. She didn't answer at first. Then quietly was, How long ago? Long enough to stop correcting people who ask in the present tense. Something in my chest tightened. She turned to me again, and for a moment, neither of us tried to fill the space with words. The rain grew heavier. She moved closer to shut the window, her hand brushing against my arm. Just that, a brush, but it left a warmth that didn't fade. I shouldn't, she began, voice low. Shouldn't what? Her eyes met mine. Be standing this close. I didn't move. Then why are you? The question hung there, reckless, young, too honest. She didn't answer. Instead, she reached past me to pull the curtain, her sleeve brushing my cheek. The scent of her perfume, faint and worn from the day, lingered between us. For a moment, everything slowed, the sound of rain, her breathing, the distance that no longer felt like distance. She turned slightly, her hand still on the window latch. You should go before it stops raining, she whispered. But neither of us moved. The rain drummed harder. Her fingers, still on the latch, trembled once, almost reaching before she pulled them back. And even without touching her, I could feel the electricity between us, steady, unspoken, impossible to mistake. It had been 2 weeks since the rain. We didn't talk about that evening, not once. But something unspoken kept us orbiting closer. I'd started helping her carry groceries, sometimes fixing small things that didn't need fixing. Every visit felt like standing on a line neither of us wanted to cross, yet neither could leave. That afternoon, she opened her door before I even knocked. I thought you'd stop coming, she said, her tone soft, teasing, but her eyes said she'd been waiting. I tried, I said. Inside, sunlight filtered through thin curtains, dust moving like quiet snow. The smell of baked bread filled the air, warm, real, human. She moved around the kitchen in a loose white shirt and jeans, sleeves rolled, hair tied low. The casualness of it made her seem even more unreachable. You cook now? I asked, watching her slice fruit with careful hands. Sometimes, she said, for people who shouldn't be here. I didn't answer. The silence stretched between us again, the kind that made my pulse too loud in my ears. Then her phone buzzed on the counter, a text. The name that flashed across the screen made her freeze. Sadia, she said quickly, as if explaining it to herself. My friend. She's downstairs. My chest tightened. Now. She nodded. She said she's bringing me something. She can't see you here. Before I could speak, she moved closer, urgency replacing her calm. Please just go in there. She pointed toward the narrow hallway that led to her study. I obeyed, but she followed, too close, too fast, and when she reached the door handle, we collided. Her hand on my chest, mine catching her waist to steady her. The breath that left her mouth brushed my neck. We froze. Sorry, she whispered, though neither of us moved away. Her fingers lingered a second too long. Her heartbeat was quick, echoing against my chest. I looked down, and she looked up, the smallest distance between a decision and a mistake. A knock echoed from the front door. She exhaled sharply, stepping back. Don't move, she whispered. Then, louder, coming. I stayed in the dim light of the study, listening. Muffled voices, laughter, something about the weather, and then Sarah's voice, smooth but tight. Every word sounded like a secret struggling to stay hidden. A few minutes later, the door closed again. I turned as she entered, leaning against the frame, her face still pale with adrenaline. "She just wanted to check in," she said, forcing a smile. I took a slow breath. "You were scared." "She would have misunderstood," she said. "Everyone would." I stepped closer, barely a foot between us now. Would they be wrong? Her breath hitched. The question hung in the air, fragile, dangerous. She didn't look away this time. "I don't know," she said, almost to herself. "I don't even know what this is." Then silence. Her hand brushed mine on the edge of the desk. Not deliberate, not accidental. Just the truth of two people who'd run out of excuses. The faint hum of the refrigerator filled the quiet, and for a moment, it felt like even the air had stopped moving. She whispered, "You should go." I nodded, but neither of us stepped back. Her fingers curled just slightly, enough to touch, enough to tremble. We didn't kiss. We didn't need to. The distance left between us was smaller than breathing. I don't know when it stopped being harmless. Maybe the night she texted me, "Can you come for a minute?" No reason, no explanation. When I got there, she was standing by the window in the half-dark, the city's lights flickering across her face. Her hair was loose, falling over her shoulders, and she looked tired but beautiful in a way that made my chest ache. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "You could have just said that," I replied, my voice quieter than I meant. She turned to face me. "Would you have still come?" I didn't answer. We both knew I would have. For a while, neither of us spoke. The air was warm, heavy, full of things we hadn't said. Then she exhaled, long and unsteady. "This isn't right," she murmured, almost to herself. "People talk. They always do. I don't care what they say." "You should." "Why?" "Because I do." That stung more than I expected. I looked away, jaw tight. "You care more about what people think than what you feel." Her silence was sharper than a reply. Then she stepped closer, close enough for her perfume to wrap around me again, jasmine and warmth and guilt. "You don't understand," she whispered. "You're young. You still think love is supposed to be brave, and you think it's supposed to be hidden." That made her look up, eyes flashing with something between anger and longing. The distance between us vanished. Her hand lifted, almost unconsciously, to touch the side of my face. I didn't move. Her fingertips were cool at first, then trembling. "You shouldn't make this harder," she said. "Then stop making it impossible." Her breath caught. Her other hand brushed against my shirt, clutching just slightly, as if steadying herself. I could feel the rise and fall of her chest against mine, small and uneven. "This can't happen," she whispered. "Then tell me to leave." She didn't. Instead, she looked at me like she wanted to, but couldn't. My hand found her wrist, not pulling her closer, just keeping her there, suspended between restraint and surrender. Her eyes softened. "You think this is simple," she said. "But I live with what people remember, what they whisper. You can walk away." "I can't." I shook my head. "You're wrong. I'll remember too." That broke her composure. She laughed once, shaky and low, then pressed her hand against my chest, not to push me away, just to feel the proof of what she was fighting. "You shouldn't," she began again, but the rest of the sentence vanished when I reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. My thumb grazed her cheek. She closed her eyes, a slow surrender, and leaned into the touch. "Say something," I whispered. She opened her eyes, gaze steady now, voice almost breaking. "I can't keep pretending I don't want this." Her words hung in the dark between us, fragile, dangerous, true. And just as our lips almost met, the hallway light flicked on outside, footsteps echoing closer. She froze. I did too. The sound stopped right outside her door. The sound outside her door froze us both. Then came a sharp knock, once, twice. Sarah's breath hitched. She stepped back, smoothing her hair too fast. "Don't say anything," she whispered. I slipped behind the half-open kitchen door as she unlocked it. The voice that followed was low, male, familiar. "You weren't answering," he said. Sarah's tone shifted, calm but brittle. "I was about to sleep, Farid." Farid, the name I'd seen once on a framed photo by her bookshelf. The man whose smile had seemed too casual to still matter. You shouldn't be here this late, she added, but her voice cracked on shouldn't. I just needed to talk. I saw someone at your door earlier, he said. A guy. My heart slammed once hard. Sarah hesitated, long enough to make the silence an answer. Then she said, carefully, the plumber. He was fixing the sink. The lie burned through the air between them. Fard sighed, something tired in his voice. You don't have to explain, Sarah. You're allowed to move on. It's just he trailed off. Just what? I didn't think it would be him. I couldn't breathe. A long pause followed. Then, quietly, you saw him, she asked. Yeah, I did. The way he looked at you. He laughed once, bitterly. It's almost flattering, being replaced by someone half my age. Her tone sharpened. You lost the right to feel replaced. And you lost the right to hide, he said. When the door finally shut again, her hands were shaking. She didn't turn around right away, just stood there, breathing hard, her body rigid with everything she just said and everything she hadn't. You can come out, she said after a moment, voice rough. I stepped forward, unsure if I should apologize or stay silent. The room smelled faintly of rain and heat and regret. She turned toward me, her eyes glassy. Now you know, she said. Who was he? My ex-husband. That explained too much and not enough. He still has keys, she whispered. Still thinks he gets to knock and talk and remind me who I used to be. I took a step closer, but she moved away, pacing. This is exactly what I was afraid of, she said. People seeing, assuming, twisting into something what? Her voice cracked. Something real. That word, real, landed between us like a confession neither of us had planned. I reached for her hand. She let me, though her fingers were trembling. He's gone, I said. No one saw me leave. She looked up then, her eyes searching mine, not for reassurance, but for something truer. This can't stay a secret forever, she said. Then don't let me one. Her breath caught. For a second, she almost smiled, that same soft, tired curve I'd first seen at her door. But this time it carried danger. She exhaled slowly, stepping closer until I could feel the warmth of her skin. Her hand rested briefly against my chest, steady, intentional. Tomorrow, she said quietly. If you come again, don't knock. And before I could reply, she turned away, leaving me with the scent of her perfume and the pulse of something that had already gone too far to stop. The next evening came too fast. I told myself not to go, that I'd stay in, let the night pass without her name in it. But my feet betrayed me. By the time I realized it, I was already outside her door. I didn't knock. The handle turned easily, just like she'd said. Inside, only one lamp was on, a soft, golden light spilling across the floor. She was by the window again, in that same quiet posture that made her look like she was waiting for something she didn't believe would happen. When she saw me, her breath caught. You came, she whispered. You said not to knock. Her lips parted, as if to say something else, but nothing came. The silence between us was almost alive, thick with everything we'd held back for too long. I stepped closer. She didn't move. The air felt heavier the nearer I got, full of the scent of her skin, the faint warmth of her breath. Fard came again, she said suddenly, voice shaking. He left a letter this time. I hesitated. Did you read it? I didn't have to. I know what it says, that I'm making another mistake. I looked at her then, really looked, and realized she was trembling. Not from fear, but from something deeper, something she was done fighting. You don't owe him your loneliness, I said. Her eyes flicked up to mine, wet with tears she wouldn't let fall. And what about you? She asked softly. What will people say about you, being with someone like me? I don't care. You should. Maybe I should, I said, stepping closer still. But I won't. Her breath hitched again. You don't understand the cost. Age.A. I just think you're worth it. That broke her guard. She closed her eyes, a single tear slipping down. When she opened them, she whispered, then stopped talking. I reached up, brushing her hair back, my fingers grazing her cheek. Her skin was warm, too warm, and I could feel her pulse where my thumb rested. She leaned in, slow, hesitant, her forehead almost touching mine. I can't promise this will last, she said. I didn't come for promises. For a heartbeat. Neither of us breathed. Then her hand found the back of my neck, gentle, certain. The space between us vanished. Not a rush, not hunger, just quiet inevitability. Her lips brushed mine once, soft, trembling, before she pulled back just enough to whisper, "Now you know." I nodded, still close enough to feel her words against my skin. "I knew before this." She smiled faintly, eyes searching mine. "Then you know it's not simple." "I don't want simple." Her forehead rested against my chest, and we stood there in silence. No pretending, no distance left to guard. The city hummed outside, ordinary and far away. When she finally looked up, there was no fear in her voice anymore. "Whatever happens after this," she said, "at least we stopped lying." I took her hand, fingers intertwining slowly, deliberately. "Then let's stop pretending we can undo it. Mornings feel different now. Not louder or brighter, just quieter in a way that doesn't ache anymore. The kind of quiet that means someone's still there." Sarah was sitting by the kitchen table when I woke, barefoot, wrapped in a soft gray shawl, reading something she probably wasn't really reading. Her coffee had gone cold again, but she didn't seem to notice. I stood in the doorway for a moment, just watching her. The woman who once looked like she belonged to another world now looked almost ordinary. That made her even more beautiful. When she noticed me, she smiled slow, knowing. "You're awake early," she said. "I didn't sleep much." "Regret. Not even a little." She laughed quietly, and it sounded different this time. Not careful, not restrained. Real. I sat across from her. For a while, neither of us spoke. The space between us was filled with the smell of toast, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the soft rhythm of her fingers against the mug. Simple things, but they felt like peace. "I used to think love was supposed to make you forget yourself," she said suddenly. "But maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it makes you remember who you've been avoiding." I smiled. Then we're both remembering. Her eyes met mine, steady, calm. No more pretending this was wrong. No more flinching at the thought of who might know. Just two people who had finally stopped running from what they wanted. "People will talk," she said again, but this time without fear. "Let them," I replied. "They don't get to live it." She reached across the table, her hand finding mine. Her fingers were warm, her thumb tracing slow, absent circles against my skin. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a quiet truth, one that didn't need words anymore. "I used to hate rainy days," she said after a pause. "They made me feel trapped. And now they remind me of the night you didn't leave." I smiled, squeezing her hand. Guess the rain finally fixed something after all. We both laughed softly. Then she stood, came around to my side, and sat beside me, close enough that her shoulder brushed mine. The warmth between us was calm now, steady, unhurried. I rested my hand on her knee, gentle, grounding. She leaned her head against my shoulder. Outside, the city was waking up, but in here, time felt suspended, just long enough to make sense of everything we'd broken to reach this stillness. "You're not going to run this time, are you?" I asked quietly. She smiled against my shirt. "Not unless you do." "I won't." Her hand slipped into mine, fingers locking effortlessly, as if this had always been where they belonged. And for the first time since that first knock on her door, everything felt simple. Not easy, not perfect, just real. The kind of real you don't undo.